Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. We have already looked at the worst 15 drivers to ever grace the door of the Williams Formula 1 team. So now let's do part 2 and look at the middle 15 drivers. The drivers from 16 to 30. The disappointing middle movie that has no real beginning or end, at least if this was a film trilogy. So if you haven't already watched part 1, go do that now. There is a link in the description somewhere. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We have Formula 1 starting this week, so the obligatory livery reviews and predictions will be up soon. And the first Formula 1 review of 2022 will also be up on Sunday. Exciting stuff. Now let's begin. Number 30, Nicholas Latifi. It's hard to judge Nicholas Latifi on the performances in his first 2 seasons in Formula 1. The 2019 Formula 2 runner-up scored a drive with Williams, whilst championship winner Nick De Vries was banished to the realm of Formula E. It was sort of a tainted chalice for Latifi, who has endured 2 years of backmarker action, whilst De Vries has gone on to be a Formula E champion for Mercedes. On the face of it, only 2 points finishes in 2 years looks pretty bad, but Williams haven't been able to provide a car capable of scoring points on a regular basis, and Latifi does at least finish races, and has gone on to score points. A best 7th at Hungary, but he has only retired from 6 out of 39 races. Hopefully he gets a few more years in Formula 1 and Williams can give him a chance to show what he has really got. Number 29, Jacques Laffite. The former Ligier driver is a Formula 1 legend. His 13-year Formula 1 career started in 1974 for the original Frank Williams Formula 1 team, but it doesn't count in this list. He got his first podium for the team in 1975, and he would take 6 wins over the next 7 years for French brand Ligier, finishing 4th in the series 3 years in a row, from 1979 to 1981. He only had 2 years with the later Williams team. Over the course of 1983 he scored a smattering of points, but only finished 11th. In 1984 the Williams was unreliable, and Jacques Laffite only managed a couple of points finishes, before surrendering back to Ligier for his final years. A massive crash at Brands Hatch in 1986 ended his career, but there is no doubting he was a fantastic racer, one of the best never to be champion. Number 28, Bruno Senna. Being the nephew of one of the greatest names in the sport is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you basically have guaranteed employment opportunities, but undoubtedly you will end up being compared to your greater uncle. Bruno actually fared better than Uncle Ayrton in a Williams. He didn't die for a start. That's cruel, but Bruno Senna has only a single season at Williams in 2012. He scored points throughout the year, but harshly was not kept on beyond 2012. He only finished 14 points behind teammate Pastor Maldonado, despite the Venezuelan winning the Spanish Grand Prix. So maybe controversial, but I really think Bruno Senna deserved more of a chance than he got in Formula 1. He's gone on to Formula E and has even had some success in endurance racing, but his career has fallen way short of his much more famous uncle. Number 27, Alexander Wurz. The Austrian had his most successful years in the late 90s with the Benetton team, and in the years that followed was a test driver for both McLaren and Williams. A little strange then that he was given a seat with Williams in 2007. Yes, he was their test driver, but he had only won Formula 1 race with McLaren in the 6 years prior. A podium finish nonetheless. He only scored a few points finishes, but this did include a podium in Canada. Wurz didn't get to see out the year, being replaced by Kazuki Nakajima, kind of like replacing a rotten tomato with a slightly more rotten tomato. Either way, the salad is ruined. This was the end of Wurz's Formula 1 career. He took a second win at Le Mans in 2009 and took sporadic races both at Le Mans and in World Rallycross all the way up to 2018. Number 26, Lance Stroll. Another currently racing Canadian, no longer with Williams, and Lance Stroll has improved since his Williams days. There was always a stigma of a pay driver who was in Formula 1 because of his daddy's money, but Lance Stroll did have some results behind him. He was a Toyota Racing Series champion, as well as the Formula 3 European Championship, so he wasn't some midfield junior runner with a big wallet behind him. His first year with Williams was the best. In 2017 he managed to get a few points finishes in the middle of the season, including a podium in Azerbaijan. 2018 was a downturn for Williams in general, and whilst Lance Stroll got a couple of points finishes, it was a huge disappointment. Since joining Racing Point / Aston Martin, and still funded by Daddy's money, he had a really good season in 2020 but took a step backwards in 2021. Honestly, he's entering his 6th Formula 1 season in 2022, and I still don't really know how good he is. But for Williams, he is average, and therefore about in the middle of the list. Number 25, Jenson Button. It is a really strange thought that Jenson Button began his Formula 1 career with Williams all the way back in the year 2000. It was only one season, but he looked like a good racer, scoring regular points and managing to finish 8th overall. Not bad for a debut year, and he was a good backup for more experienced teammate Ralf Schumacher. Despite some good results, Jenson Button was dumped in favour of Juan Pablo Montoya and went on loan to Benetton. He moved around a bit heading to BAR, who became Honda, and finally Brawn in 2009, when Jenson Button finally won the World Championship. He spent the rest of his career with McLaren, before retiring after a single drive in 2017. He runs his own team these days, and happily they have had successes here and there, and hopefully it is something he continues with and has even more future success. Number 24, Nico Hülkenberg. Another good driver Williams dumped after a single season. Nico Hülkenberg won it all on his way to Formula 1. First was the A1 GP Series, then the Formula 3 Euro Series, and finally GP2. After a year test driving for Williams in 2009, he signed for the team in 2010, and he was good. He scored regular points and got on pole at the Brazilian Grand Prix. He dropped to 8th, but he still got on pole in a Williams, something that hadn't been done for 5 years before that race. But now, instead of keeping the talented German youngster, they signed Pastor Maldonado, who would win a race for the team, but Hülkenberg ended up as a reserve driver for Force India, before getting a full-time drive with the team. He'd also raced for Sauber and Renault, and is still a reserve driver for Aston Martin in 2022, and is often linked with a substitute role with pretty much every team that needs someone in a hurry. But he is the driver who has competed in the most races without ever getting on the podium. 179 races in Formula 1 and no podiums. For a driver who constantly performs well, that is a weight tagged to a chain and wrapped around Hülkenberg's neck. Maybe he'll be back in a race seat one day and he can finally take that podium, but honestly, time is running out. Number 23, Rubens Barrichello. They signed the highly experienced Brazilian race winner and multiple-time championship runner-up for the last 2 years of a very, very long career. Rubens Barrichello had won 16 races with Ferrari and Brawn, and had completed 17 championships before doing 2 years with Williams in 2010 and 2011. He wasn't exactly past it and washed up either, having finished 3rd overall with Brawn in 2009. Williams weren't quite on the level of what Brawn managed, but Rubens did a respectable job for the team in his first season, scoring points more often than not, but his final year was poor, with Williams way off the pace. Rubens only scored 4 points and finished 17th overall, and it was a sad way for his Formula 1 career to end. But since then he has been racing in the Brazilian Stock Car Series, where he won the championship in 2014 and has won 16 races just like in Formula 1. He still races in the series in 2022. Number 22, George Russell. The Golden Boy. There has been a lot of hype for George Russell since he debuted for Williams all the way back in 2019. The GP3 and Formula 2 champion did take 48 races to score a point for Williams, but a car that wasn't much good did hold him back. He was unlucky to lose out to Robert Kubica for the only points scored by Williams in 2019, before a year as the ultimate backmarkers in 2020 when he and Latifi couldn't get close to the points. He did manage to nearly win a race for Mercedes when he subbed in for Lewis Hamilton, but Mercedes sabotaged that. With Williams he finally scored in Hungary in 2021, but behind teammate Latifi, before a few more good results on pace at a few races and some amazing qualifying performances. He did score Williams' first podium since 2017, and their first second place since Felipe Massa came second in Abu Dhabi in 2014, but it was at Spa when the race was basically not run, under very wet conditions. He moved to Mercedes for 2022 and begins a new chapter of his life. Number 21, Nick Heidfeld. Another utility German race driver who got a single season for Williams. Much like Nico Hülkenberg, Nick Heidfeld won everything he could on the way to Formula 1. The German Formula 3 champion and International F3000 champion signed with Prost for a terrible year 2000, before finding his feet with Sauber for the next few years. After a year with Jordan, he signed with Williams in 2005. He would take 3 podiums and score the odd points finish in the first half of the year, before a testing accident followed by a motorcycle crash led to him missing the end of the season, with Antonio Pizzonia taking his place. Even though he missed 5 races, he only finished 8 points behind teammate Mark Webber, but left Williams for BMW Sauber in 2006, where he would have his best years, even finishing 5th overall in 2007. He'd see out his career with a brief return to Sauber and half a year with Renault, and as the driver with the most podiums never to have won a race. He moved to Formula E and Venturi for a couple of years, not winning there either. In fact, for a driver who won constantly in the junior formula, from 2000 to 2022, he has won 1 race in motorsport. A single win in the American Le Mans Series in 2013 with Rebellion alongside Nicolas Prost and Neil Jani. Number 20, Pastor Maldonado. The last man to win a race for Williams a decade ago in 2012 in Spain. And you know what? He won that race on pure race pace alone. Why could they only do it on that one occasion? He even took pole position, and Williams set their garage on fire in celebration, all by accident. That win definitely boosted him up this list, because without that result, he achieved absolute garbage. 1 point in 2011 and 1 point in 2013. In 58 races for Williams, he only scored points in 7 races, which just makes it even more amazing that everything came together for him to win in Spain in 2012. To be honest, Williams weren't competitive in 2011, and Rubens Barrichello didn't do much better than Maldonado. And he did finish ahead of Bruno Senna in 2012, just barely. The final straw was 2013, when Maldonado finished behind young Finnish teammate Valtteri Bottas, who himself only had 1 points finish. So again, Williams weren't competitive. What Maldonado did gain was a reputation for crashing that he was never able to shake free from. After 2 more disappointing years with Lotus, he moved on from Formula 1 and has done some endurance racing without much success. How did he win a Formula 1 race? Number 19, Mark Webber. The Australian never really achieved much in the 3 years in Formula 1 before he joined Williams. I mean, the first one was with Minardi, so you can't expect much, so a miracle 5th place in Australia may point to a future Formula 1 race winner. But 2 mediocre years with Jaguar was apparently enough to convince Williams to sign Mark Webber for a couple of years. In fact, from 2002 to 2008, Mark Webber finished no higher than 10th in the final standings and only had a couple of podiums to his name. With Williams, he consistently scored points in his first season and even grabbed a podium in Monaco. His second year wasn't as good, but Webber once again beat his teammate. It wasn't stellar, and what he achieved later with Red Bull, along with a runner-up at Le Mans and a WEC championship win, the end of Mark Webber's career was definitely the best part of his career, but he did a respectable job for Williams and breaks the top 20 on this list. Number 18, Nico Rosberg. I think looking at his time at Williams, you'd never guess that Nico Rosberg would be world champion someday, but then I guess looking at his Minardi days, you'd never guess Fernando Alonso would be who he is. But in his 4 years at Williams, he broke the top 10 in the final standings twice and got a couple of podiums. He was consistent and scored points more often than not, especially in 2009. Whilst not getting on the podium, he scored points at every race bar 6 and finished 7th overall. He left Williams in 2010 for Mercedes as they entered the sport and took 23 wins, sparring with teammate Lewis Hamilton, finally taking the championship in 2016 before immediately retiring and becoming a corporate shill for Mercedes in his new role as a Sky Sports pundit. Number 17, Felipe Massa. Last year when I did my list of Ferrari drivers, Felipe Massa managed to get 18th out of 77. Here for Williams, he goes one better in 17th. For all I have said about Felipe Massa in the past, and it remains true that he hasn't won any kind of motor race since 2008, he still did a pretty good job everywhere he went. He drove to a standard, scored points and got podiums, although sadly no wins for the Williams team. After many successful years with Sauber and Ferrari, Massa moved to Williams for his final 4 years in Formula 1. He scored points on a regular basis, as it was the last time to date that Williams were really competitive. He would take 5 podiums in his first 2 years, but he never beat teammate Valtteri Bottas in the final standings in his 3 years partnered with the Finn. He would overcome Lance Stroll in his final year and would head into the world of Formula E and Brazil stock car. And as previously mentioned, he has not won a race for 14 years. Massa did a good job for Williams. He managed to get a 6th and a 7th in the final standings, and he left before the really bad turn down in form for the team. Not a bad way to end a really long career. Number 16, Valtteri Bottas. I just mentioned that the Finn beat Felipe Massa every year for the 3 years they were teammates at Williams. He also beat Pastor Maldonado in his first season, although a medal will not be presented for that fact. Williams had a bad 2013, and I do wonder if they thought about ditching the Finn at that point. It was a good choice not to, because in 2014 he would get 6 podiums and score points at every race except 2. After finishing 4th in the standings that year, a little bit of hype grew around Bottas, and 2015 was pretty good too. He got a couple of podiums and again was ever consistent and managed to get to 5th. His final year was a step backwards for Williams as a team, and Bottas was a bit deeper in the midfield, but again almost always scoring points. After 2016 he replaced Nico Rosberg at Mercedes as wingman to Lewis Hamilton. He took 10 wins and finished runner-up twice, but now in 2022 he is back in the midfield with the Alfa Romeo team, and it's going to be interesting to see how he does. So that is the middle part of this list, from worst to best of Williams Formula 1 drivers since they began in Formula 1 in 1977. All bar one of these drivers are from the latter part of the team's history, which just goes to show how mediocre Williams have been over the last 20 years. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the final part of this series, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Who is going to be number 1? Do any of these drivers deserve to be higher or lower than I suggest? Leave a like and tell your friends. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.